But for now, I'd like to ask you, Maggie, for your perspective here as well, because I understand that you you experienced some medical emergencies as well during the past couple of months. Perhaps you could tell us a bit about it.
Yes, absolutely. And I cannot agree more with the importance of having a medical insurance, especially after what I've been through. So I'm just going to share my personal experience. Just shortly after MCO was implemented on the 18th of March, towards the end of March, I was diagnosed with dengue. But of course, before finding out that it was dengue, I had a really serious health scare, worrying that it could have been COVID-19. So thank goodness it wasn't. So dengue, and I was hospitalized, and then about 2.5 months later, I actually fainted in the bathroom after just recovering from dengue. So I thought it was probably an after effect or whatnot. So it turns out it was something else, which was a ruptured ovarian cyst, which was about 5 cm in diameter, which is quite huge, and also an inflamed appendix. So in general, I am pretty healthy. I eat well, I exercise very regularly. So it's true when they say malang tak berbau, you just don't know when things like that could happen. Well, they are called emergencies for a reason. So, but of course, there was some hiccup with my coverage at that time. So unfortunately, I had to pay for my own medical fees, which were quite a large sum because it involved surgery. But at the end of the day, what I've learned is that having a emergency fund, even if you don't have insurance, is so important to have savings for this, because I feel like not a lot of people do have that. But I'm glad that I do have insurance coverage at this point. Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear that you've come through your medical emergency.
Yes, I'm glad it's all over. It's been about a month since the laparoscopy, so yes.
So, you know, I mean, obviously we've talked about the fact that this was unexpected. It was a complete emergency. Yes. There was no indication beforehand. No. But looking back at it, what would you have done differently?
I think in my case, I wouldn't have done anything differently apart from making sure that, you know, my insurance everything was in check, because that's so important. Because sometimes we just forget that, you know, you just kind of leave that at the back of your head that yeah, I'm covered, but what kind of coverage are you getting, and what are the policy that you have, the details. You should really understand your own policy if you have one. But I think in general, I would maybe do more health screenings, which Dr. Faisal mentioned earlier. But in general, I do go for health checks pretty regularly. But I guess in my case, it was just really unfortunate that it happened within such a short time, which was really unforeseen circumstances. So I would say, to sum it up, make sure you know what you're covered for, and make sure you know your policy, know it well, how long you're covered for, and also the types of policies that's available, because there's health, there's life insurance, there's travel insurance, there is car insurance for accidents and stuff like that. And of course, please go for your health screenings, because I notice a lot of my friends, they have never, ever been for a health screen. It's really appalling. I'm like, no way, are you serious? And because I do have some a following on social media, and I put up a poll asking, have you ever been for a health screen? 80% said, no, I've never been. That's just based on, you know, my personal following, and that was very shocking to know.
And I guess that comes back to the health-seeking behaviors that you were talking about, right, Dr. Faisal? So perhaps you could weigh in on this as well. Talk to us a little bit about the health literacy that you've seen amongst the Malaysian population. I mean, not just when it comes to health-seeking behaviors, but just, you know, at a population at large. What has been your experience?
All right. So the NHMS 2019 also asked a question assessing the level of health literacy among Malaysians, adult Malaysians. And the data showed a third of Malaysians have inadequate health literacy. So when we talk about health literacy, it's not just about awareness and knowledge. It is how you actually consume the information, digest it, and then actually practice it. So it has different dimensions. It is not just about awareness and knowledge. Yes, awareness and knowledge is important to change behavior. By itself, it does not change behavior. We all know this. Otherwise, no doctors will smoke, right? And I'm sure you know doctors who smoke. Sorry to doctors out there. well, my friends anyway. All right, so talking about health literacy, and then perhaps before I talk about health literacy, perhaps I'd like to, just chip in on about the financial part about health. NHMS 2019 also showed that about Malaysians spend about 5.1% of their overall household expenditure on health. And our data shows that from NHMS again, 22% of Malaysians, only 22% have health insurance. And we did ask among those who do not have health insurance why they don't have any health insurance. 36% felt it was not needed. And an additional 43% says they can't afford it. In a way, I would say this is a measure of priority. How do you prioritize health? That's one, right? And the other is what's the responsibility of the government in providing quality care to its population. I'm sure you have heard of universal healthcare coverage, universal healthcare with the UHC. So I'm not going to touch on UHC, but besides the financial investment that you need to put in your health, I'd like to touch upon the investment that you need to put upfront to prevent disease in the first place, because a lot of diseases can be prevented, especially non-communicable diseases. Maggie touched upon dengue just now. Dengue obviously can be prevented. And despite knowing how to prevent dengue, it is still what we call hyperendemic in Malaysia. It is pretty common. You get it in not just in the lower socioeconomic class, segment of the society, even in high, and I assume, for example, when you set your data on health screening, I'm sure those people who follow you of the middle and higher socioeconomic, and you can see health literacy. So coming back to health literacy, it doesn't really correlate to how well educated you are or how well off you are. These seem to be prevalent, cuts across different segments of society among Malaysia. So I'll stop there first.
All right, thank you, Dr. Faisal. And I guess basically what it boils down to is that prevention is better than cure, right? And you talked about the investment that Malaysians need to put into their health, not just from a monetary perspective, but also from a time and energy perspective.